All right, well, this one hits close to home.
We have a lot to unpack with this one because I feel like it's going to hit close to home for a lot of people.
Yeah, so, all right, we're talking about why guests visit your church. I want to talk about this Pew Research article I read. I want to talk about this podcast I started listening to.
Love podcasts.
And then we'll finish things up with this really great resource that you've created to help church leaders be able, I just almost gave it away, but to help church leaders.
Yeah, we don't want to spoil it too soon.
All right, let's dive in. All right, so Matt, why guests visit your church? So in my quest to kind of get prepared for this, I was doing some light research on Pew Research because that's what I do with my time.
Yeah.
And I found this article. Let me pull it up here. Okay. So the title of this article, let me see here.
You said it was by Pew Research.
Pew Research. Pew Pew. The search for a new congregation or choosing a new church or house of worship. Now, I want to throw this out there. It is a little dated. 2016 is when this was released. Obviously, a lot of things happened a few years ago that kind of made it hard to research. And so that's probably why they haven't had an updated version of this, but it's still relevant.
Sure, yeah.
And
it's close enough for horseshoes and hand grenades.
It is. So this part here I want to read out. So more than 8 in 10 adults who've ever looked for a new house of worship say they attended a service during their search. And roughly 7 in 10
70%
talk to members of the congregation or friends or colleagues about the house of worship they were considering.
Okay, so that means that they had a personal connection. There was like a bridge between them in that new church, and it was a person.
And 69%, which will round to 70, so 70% of people, when they were searching for a new church, whether it was maybe a new church because the previous church they were going to, they needed to go somewhere else, or maybe they've never been to a church. Regardless, 7 in 10 of those people that are searching for a new house of worship talk to the person that currently goes to that house of worship before attending it.
Okay.
That's pretty profound.
That's very profound. And it feels like it should be obvious. Like when you shared that with me, I was like, well, yeah, duh. But at the same time, it's always beneficial and helpful to have that quantified. Because you understand that intuitively, but to have it put into numbers is always really, really eye-opening.
Yes. Now, keeping all this in mind, I want to move on to a podcast I'm listening to.
Okay.
So this podcast I'm listening to, it's called What Happened at First Baptist. And it's about a church here in Jacksonville, First Baptist Church Jacksonville, which is an incredible church. I actually went to that church when I was a kid growing up. I started going there. My parents were going there, and obviously that made me go there because they grabbed me and pulled me with them. And I was like 5 or 6 years old at the time, and we went there for a few years. And it's so wild because in the podcast, the current pastor, Heath, he's going through kind of the history of First Baptist Jags and just talking about how, one time it was the fastest growing church in America. It was like in the top 10.
It's nuts.
I mean, this is a church that whenever I was there as a kid, he talks about how you have this building that houses thousands of people, this massive building in downtown Jacksonville. And it was so popular and so many people were going there that people would be sitting on the steps because there was not enough room in the pews.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I was on those steps. When I was a kid, wow. I have fond memories of entering that worship center and being on those steps because there's no room in the pews. And I mean, it was just unreal to see all these people go to church.
That's crazy.
And part of the reason, I mean, there's a lot of reasons why the church grew. I mean, number one, obviously God was in the midst of it and amazing things were happening there. People were getting baptized and just so much awesome stuff. But a big driving factor, not only of First Baptist of Jacksonville, but just a lot of churches like that, was you have this church that has just amazing growth and people want to be a part of it.
Right.
And I feel like, especially during that time period, like 80s, 90s, even the early 2000s, like the fact that your church like was the place to be made it even more of a place to be.
Sure, yeah. There's momentum because the excitement around it creates momentum, and then that momentum turns into inertia if it's sustained long enough.
Yeah.
And so that's very attractional. Like a lot of people get excited to be a part of something exciting.
Yeah.
But still, like you and I have been to a church here in town that's really big now. When we were first going, it was much smaller, but still pretty big and exciting.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the reason either of us went.
No.
It's because we knew someone that was going there and we were invited.
Yes.
So even at big churches, the dynamic you talked about in the Pew Research article, it's still relevant. It still applies.
Yeah.
So for both big and small churches, the main driver of new people walking into the doors of the church, which we all hope and pray for, is an invitation.
Yes.
It is some kind of personal connection. I have visited churches based on just like my wife and I were in the aisle at Target checking out, and the cashier was like, "Hey, I go to such and such church. You should come," and we went.
which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, that they just wanted to do that right in the midst of their work and checking you out. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, they had that priority. But again, that's the main driver of people walking into the doors of your church. Because back in the day, like, you could open the doors of a church and just expect people to come, and they would.
100%.
And we are no longer in that era of church anymore.
We're not. Church has radically changed. Not for the better or for worse. It's just changed.
Yeah, it's just different.
And so the approach of getting people to come, though, is still the same. It's always been inviting. It's just back then it wasn't as hard to invite, or as not much of as a need.
Yeah.
Because it was just already naturally, like, if this church was a big happening place and stuff, and back then there was not as many things to occupy your time.
Yes.
And so it was easier.
Yeah. In many ways, yes.
Now, obviously you're watching, you're like, okay, Wes, I get it. Inviting people, that's how I get guests to visit our church. But we want to take it to the next step. We want to give you some resources to help you with that. And Matt, you've actually pulled together really great resources these are Canva templates. And for the people who are not familiar with Canva, just kind of quickly let them know.
So Canva it's Photoshop for dummies is what I tell people it is. And I'm one of those dummies. So this is not an insult, because I use Canva all the time. And I don't know how to use Photoshop, but it's a platform that allows you to create really great designs for all kinds of applications, not just flyers or invitation cards or anything like that,
Basically
which is what we're about to talk about. But for anything, any visual media at your church, you can use Canva to create it. And it requires like no skill level to do it, because it's built on templates. The whole site is full of templates that you can choose and then customize and edit and then use as your own. We actually have done 2-hour-long live streams.
Which is funny, because we do
Canva.
church software. The heart of what we do
We're
is
not
church.
Canva. We're ChurchTrac. And we're not paid by Canva. We just know Canva is a powerful resource and want as many churches to know about it as possible. The biggest reason why we love Canva is that there's a free version and a paid version. And Canva gives the paid version to nonprofits for free. So if you have your nonprofit status, like your 501c3 or some other designation that you're a nonprofit, you can use Canva for free and have access to the whole platform. Nothing's paywalled.
Yeah.
I love Canva. I can actually personally attest to the reason why these invitations are so effective, and also the handiness of using Canva to do this.
Yeah.
My wife and I last year hosted a block party. We called it a front yard barbecue. And we called it a front yard barbecue because I literally drug the grill from the backyard to the front yard in our driveway, and we invited our whole neighborhood. And what I did is I one evening was like bathing the kids, getting them dressed, read their bedtime stories, put them down. And in that time, my wife sat on the couch, opened up the Canva app on her phone.
Just on her phone.
And designed a whole flyer for our front yard barbecue. And then we printed that out. And then I canvassed our whole neighborhood, hundreds of houses. And about 50 houses showed up, which is a pretty good turnout.
That's impressive.
We had hundreds of people in our front yard,
Yeah.
a bunch of kids running around. It was nuts, and it was the best. We had a blast. We had so much fun that we're doing it again. We're going to do it again here in a couple months.
Except this time, instead of the blazing heat of the summer, you've chosen.
Yeah, we learned our lesson. We're going to do it in the fall when it's a little more comfortable. But the whole point is, you can use physical invitations, whether it be just a little card that a member hands to somebody, or a flyer that you use to canvass a neighborhood or a parking lot or something like that. And that's going to be very effective in getting new people to come to your church. I can attest to the effectiveness, but also at a lot of churches I've seen, and I've seen it at my church, little 2x2 cards or 4x4 cards that members can take as they leave the church, throw it in the purse or in their wallet, or have it in their car or something like that, and hand them out to people. So I put together a blog post. It's called Canva Invite Card Templates. You can use the templates that I linked to there, but you can also just go to Canva, create an account, and find your own templates, whatever works best for you. But we have a whole blog post with different types of invitations that you can use at your church to get the word out about your church and bring new people in.
And just to I'm going to quickly show just a few of them here. So this is a newer one you actually did called 7 Creative Church Invite Card Templates for free. I like the free part of it. But the first one is a church mission statement invitation. This one's so neat because it really just says exactly what your church is about. And it just makes it very easy for you to just hand out to people. Your people can give to people in their neighborhood or their coworkers and stuff like that. And it's just something that I appreciate the simplicity of that.
Yes.
But let's see here. It's another one. This one's kind of similar to that church invitation card. You're invited, and then I guess this one has this particular Canva template has other things too in it.
It's double-sided. It's a 2-page template. So there's another. It's double-sided. So you are invited, and then on the other side is you can add information about your church.
So y'all can check out, just click the link here on the post itself, and it'll show you in Canva the whole template. All right, beautiful Christmas invitation. That Christmas is a great time to capitalize in inviting people to come to our church.
Of course.
Because what did you call them? The people?
So the people that, Christians that only come for Christmas and Easter, they're CEO Christians, Christmas and Easter only.
Yeah, Christmas and Easter only, which is it's funny how a CEO is usually an awesome thing, but in that case, it's not awesome.
No, you don't want to be a CEO Christian. But yeah, there's a template for Christmas invitations and a template for Easter invitations, just because those 2 services are the time of year where people are a little more likely to actually come.
Yeah. All right, so another one here, worship service invitation. I think this one's so cool for people, especially if you're doing maybe a special worship service that's very musically centric, to invite people that may be really into music. I've done that a few times with people.
Yeah, because I know a lot of churches, they'll host a special event, a whole just worship service where the whole service is just about music.
Yeah.
And if you do that at your church, or if you plan to do that, that's a great template to use.
I've even seen some churches, they'll bring in an artist who is a Christian artist, but their music is not necessarily worship music, but it's good uplifting music, and have a free concert and then just invite everyone to come. And it's a great opportunity. Bible study invitation. Why do you like this one so much?
Well, just because a Bible study is lower risk for a newbie.
Yeah.
Than going to a big church and a service and have to try to navigate that. Rather than that, you can they can be invited by a member of the church into their living room, which they may have already been to, or a coffee shop or something like that, which feels way more low key, low stress, low risk. And so therefore, some people would be more likely to come to that than to a church service itself.
And then the last one you've got here, the church block party flyer, which really is just block party, to be honest, because that's what you did.
Yeah, that's what I did at my house.
And I think this is just so great because this shows that inviting people to church, it doesn't have to be some crazy thing you have to think through and have all these plans in place. It's literally just taking something that you have created for your church members and then handing it to them and say, hey, give these to people and just invite them. And whether it's inviting them to a block party or inviting them to a Christmas event at the church or Easter, or inviting them. My church does Alpha, which is a really neat program for people that aren't Christians at all. And that's an easy way to invite, because we're not even inviting them to church necessarily. We're just inviting them to have a conversation about religion and stuff. So there's so many ways we can invite people. And that's really, when it comes down to it, why do people come to our church? Why do we get new guests that come into our church doors? Well, it's not magic.
No, it's not magic. And it's also not some big program or some big marketing thing. It's an invitation. It's that personal connection. That's it.
Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and that it not only gave you entertainment, but hopefully some value to help you in your ministry. Be sure to give it a like. And if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe to our channel, hit that bell. You'll get notified on any other videos that we have coming out, which seem to be one every other week. Now, when we're not making church software here at ChurchTrac, we're always trying to put together resources just like this video and the blog posts and everything else in between, just to really help your ministry build the body of Christ. I've attached those links from those resources we mentioned between that podcast, which I highly recommend because that podcast is such a great story of redemption and how God moves in church. But also some of those other resources we've got there for Canva. So till then, see you next time.